Hello, guys. Good day. This is Anna of Reinforcement Club, your fellow positive reinforcer. Today, we are going to talk about breaking free from negative self talk by using the three C's. Now, I am going to reveal to you the three C's later on because, first of all, we are going to, bring about what is really a self talk and how important it is. Now, self talk is the ongoing internal dialogue a person has with themselves, either mentally or spoken aloud. You know the way when we do something and there is some kind of inner voice inside our head telling us we can't do it, distracting us, discouraging us to think outside the box. That whenever we try something new, there's an inner voice or inner bitch, quote unquote, inside our head telling us that we can't do it. This inner dialogue usually comes out whenever we do something different, we do something new. Because our inner dialogue, which is actually comes from our brain, will always want us to be safe within our comfort zone. Now, self talk, our inner dialogue, our inner voice, can be constructive or destructive, realistic or distorted, and encouraging or critical. Now, this inner narrative that we have inside our head profoundly affects how we perceive ourselves and interpret our experiences wherever we are. Self talk is basically influenced by how we perceive ourselves, how we value ourselves, our self esteem and self image. These are the foundational to our self talk, influencing how kind or harsh we speak to ourselves. Now, our self image and how our self esteem is also influenced by our environment, the society around, the people around, our family, peers, our teachers, even our own traditions. Like, people are different around the world. You know the way, if when you compare women living in the Middle East to the women in the Western countries, they're quite different. And of course, in the most part, they are going to think differently about themselves. Now, this is not about women. This is about self-talk. Now, it's just that it's how the environment and the people around impacts our how we look at ourselves, how we value ourselves, basically, plus our genes. But the sweet spot to it, that in spite that everything is already spoon feed to us, our genes, our environment, everything is just, you just have to think about what you have to do. The best thing about being human is that we have the the freedom to choose how we think and how to think, to choose, whichever options we would like to adapt, in spite that everything is just given to us. We have the choice to think positively or negatively to ourselves. Now, the way we talk to ourselves also, impacts nearly all areas of our lives. It shapes our emotional health, decision making, and problem solving skills. The way when we talk negatively to ourselves and we become critical, we tend not to do anything to our problems, or we messed it up. We just mess it up. But when we think highly about ourselves and we are encouraging, we are good to ourselves, we, for us, nothing, for those people, nothing seemed to be impossible. Because think about it. If, like, for example, if I talk positively to myself, if I think highly to myself, I know I could make mistakes. I know I could mess it up in some point because I think that nobody's perfect. But although I'm gonna mess it up today, the good thing about it is that I'm gonna come back the next time around better, smarter, and that's just the best way to fix things. Just to be better and better until I grow, until I become the best version of me. So that's how it is when we think highly, when we think positively to ourselves, when we speak good things to ourselves, when we affirm, when we have positive affirmations about ourselves, we tend to work well, better compared to being negative. Now, also, the way we talk to ourselves impacts our relationships. You know, the way how we view and interact with others. For example, if we are critical to ourselves, so we talk negatively to ourselves, we discourage, uh, meeting new people. We have trust issues. So whenever we think to ourselves that way, it can lead to fear of vulnerability and low self-esteem or low self-worth, and that results to isolation. And lastly, self-talk also has a great deal in the in terms of achieving our goals. When, like for example, when we tend to be optimistic, you know, about our, what goal to pursue and how we do it, and we open to any mistakes, and we tend to be fast in executing our executing our ideas to be able to reach that goal. And it's important to be positive in whenever we decided to build something. Otherwise, when we are negative all the time, we're not going to build something good. It's just, or when we build something, it's not going to last. When we build something negatively. Otherwise, when it's already built, it wouldn't give us a good output. It wouldn't be for a good reason. If we build something from for a wrong reason. Now, in terms of negative self-talk, you know, negative self-talk is a persistent internal dialogue that often focuses on perceived flaws, mistakes, and inadequacies. Whenever we don't value ourselves, we keep ourselves, to ourselves. We don't expose ourselves to other ideas, to other people, to other influences. We just, we tend to be hiding ourselves. We're not proud of us. And, it actually starts from negative thoughts, though, that whenever we do this, when we talk negatively to ourselves, we're going to have low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, fear of failure, even to the point of self-sabotage. Negative self-talk can lead to behaviors that fulfill those negative predictions, such as avoiding opportunities, procrastination, and giving up easily. Because when we talk negatively to ourselves, that nothing will ever change, and yes, indeed, you just quit, and then nothing changed, nothing happens. Now, to be able for us to overcome this negative self-talk, I am going to reveal to you the 3 C's this time. The first C is to catch those negative thoughts and patterns, even the behaviors that will show us that we don't see ourselves, we don't pay high regard to ourselves, we don't love ourselves. Look, we if we label our negative thoughts as just thoughts rather than truths, this can create emotional distance. That it could be true that we can't do it, we're not enough, we're not beautiful, we're not we cannot be successful if we just label it as thoughts. But when we accept the truth that, think about it, think, just imagine yourself as someone you deeply love. You wouldn't say anything negative. You wouldn't discourage that loved one, that love of your life. And, just merely talking to ourselves, bullying ourselves, it's not love. It hurts, though, when we find out that we don't love ourselves. But in order for us to change those negative patterns and prove to ourselves that we do love ourselves, we have to accept that. To be able for us to find solutions or way to show love and value to ourselves. Now, it's important to catch those negative thoughts, behaviors, perspectives, observations, ideas, which can only stop us from growing. Now, becoming aware of the thought as it arises is the first step in breaking the cycles. Take note of those negative thought patterns that is just going to distract or discourage you to think outside the box. Now the second C is challenge. Now whenever you catch yourself thinking about those negative thoughts, examine and question the thought. Now in this portion, this is the time wherein you argue to yourself. Now I also do this. I'm talking to myself that whenever I do something and then some thought would would just pop up in my head, I do argue to myself and challenge those thoughts. Although I'm not a perfect person though, but I do argue to myself. I do fight myself. So to be able for me to get what I want. And I decided to challenge and argue against my inner bitch, which is talking inside my head, because I've decided to love myself, to show love to myself, to pursue personal development for me, and I would do anything for it. That's why I challenge my thoughts at times. Now, ask those negative thoughts. Ask those thoughts that is being verbalized or speak out by your inner critic. Ask it if it's based on facts. If there's another way to interpret the situation, challenge that thought. Or if the thought is influenced by a cognitive distortion, such as catastrophizing or overgeneralization, overthinking. It's look, I could say, since I argue to myself at times, I could say that it's worth it. That I feel like I'm getting smarter. And I could say that because every time I argue to myself and I just execute the solutions that I have made in order to solve the problem, and sometimes it doesn't work though, but I've learned and it made me happy. Lastly, change. From catch to challenging your thoughts to change. When you've decided that those negative thoughts, those thoughts that are inside your head isn't helping at all, shift those negative thoughts to a more balanced or positive one. This might involve reframing it to be more realistic, constructive, or compassionate. If the inner critic is telling you something, you can just Google it if it's true. Don't believe it instantly. It's just a thought. You can even forget it later. Now, once again, the three C's to fight the negative self talk is number one, catch it, be aware about it. Be aware that in some point, sometimes we don't love ourselves. So when you become aware about it, then you can find solution. You can find ways to show love to ourselves because we all do deserve love. The second C is challenge. Argue to yourself. Argue against that inner critic inside your head. Find the facts. Well, it could be true or it could be not true. Find a way to really come up with a better answer rather than accepting what's inside your head. And lastly, change. That is, the only way to change is to accept the situation that sometimes we all do mess up. All in all, through awareness and practice, we can all train the mind to engage in more supportive, encouraging, and constructive self-talk, which can be advantages to us. Look, the three C's wouldn't be, to some people this wouldn't be enough. Sometimes some people do need actual therapy. But if you are wise enough, humble enough to really face the truth, then catch, challenge, and change will be good enough for you to change your life bit by bit. Now, if you ever learn something from this episode and you love it, you can share this. You can share this to your friends and follow me in Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even an Amazon podcast. Reinforce me, club. And by the way, your fellow positive reinforcer, I do appreciate your time and have a lovely day ahead. Thank you very much.